if we are running on stress and anxiety and fumes and frustration? It's going to be very difficult to have space for connection because we're going to be so quick to react, so quick to snap, so quick to yell. We are not just here to micromanage and to direct and to control these little beings. We are here to support them fully, to love them fully, to give them an entire section of our heart. And so it's so important to remember that in the day-to-day. As we grind through all of the to-dos, I can stop and have these moments of connection with my kid. It's not just about the logistics and, getting all of their things together and helping them to follow through and nagging when they don't, but also finding those moments to really deeply and truly connect with them in between all the noise and all the busyness. Welcome to Parents and Teens Rising, the podcast that bridges the gap between parents and teens and helps families thrive. I'm Jasmine Chandler, teen and parent coach, wilderness rites of passage guide, and founder of Guided Passages. After over 16 years of working with young people, I know how challenging and rewarding these years can be. Each week, we'll explore real conversations, practical tools, and fresh perspectives to help you connect with your teen, support their confidence, and navigate the ups and downs. Let's rise together. Hey everyone, welcome back into the podcast. I am so happy you're here. I'm so happy to be here with you. I wasn't able to drop an episode last week because life got a little bit busy with away tournaments for my daughter's volleyball team and workshops I was running and lots of different things. So it feels really good to be back here with you today. I hope you've had a good few weeks since we've talked last. And today what I want to talk about is something that I don't hear discussed enough, and that is what's actually getting in the way of the connection that we want to have with our teenagers. And so this is not what our teenagers are doing wrong, and it's not what they need to change, but what's actually happening on our side of the relationship. Because what I know to be true is that most parents genuinely love their kids so deeply and so wholeheartedly. They want closeness. They want warmth. They want to have those moments of connection and laughter and joy, right? They want those moments where it just feels good between them and their teenager. And yet something keeps getting in the way. So today we're going to name 5 of those things, and then I'm going to share what to do instead, or some ideas that you can practice and put into place that can hopefully help to shift things for the better. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the first thing that often gets in the way is that you have started seeing your teenager as a problem to solve instead of a person to know. So at some point, without even realizing it, the relationship can start to shift. Your teen goes from being your little kid, this whole person who you adore, to feeling like a situation you're constantly trying to manage. And when that happens, they feel it. And the first step, as with all things, is just some awareness and some self-compassion. We are navigating a lot, we are juggling a lot, we are holding a lot, and we're trying to help our teens be responsible humans, to be good humans. But what can often happen is that in the process of us trying to shape them in a positive way, we end up highlighting their shortcomings. We start constantly nagging them. So all of our interactions with them start to be centered around all these areas that we tell them they're not doing it right. So they start to feel like everything we talk to them about is something that they're doing wrong or some way that they're not measuring up. And it's well-intentioned, right? We want them to be responsible and get up and do their chores. We want them to, pull out their homework and start working on it. We want them to take their dish to the sink. All these things are so important for sure. But what happens is we start to become managers instead of connected parents. And that's where we really start to lose connection. This happened to me just this last weekend. So this is an ongoing thing that we always have to revisit. It's not something that, we just have all the time and do it perfectly all the time. Just this last weekend, I started harping on my kid, about this, that, and the other. And the crazy thing is that he had done some of the things that I've been nagging him about really, really well. He'd done a lot of really amazing things. And still, instead of acknowledging the amazing things that he did, I just kept poking at the things that he hadn't done yet. And, you know, to the point where he's like, Mom, why are you on my back all day long? Right? Why are you pointing out all these things I did wrong? I actually did a lot of things right. Like he had to tell me this in a forceful way. And I had to self-reflect. You know, I was in a high stress moment. I had things that I needed to have done in a certain time frame, and his time frame wasn't matching up with my time frame and whatever it might be. But I forgot that connection first always helps, right? Before we just jump in and continually nag and berate, you know, about all the things that got missed. So I had to have that moment of self-reflection just a few days ago. Like, oh yeah, okay. Been running around really busy, got all these things that I'm trying to get done, and I just want my kid to do it perfectly. And you know, he's not going to. He's not going to do it perfectly. And I need to be willing to set aside my ideals of perfection sometimes and recognize the good that is happening and remember to pause. When I have that inclination to nag again, or when I have the inclination to highlight something that wasn't perfect, that I can pause and reflect. Like, is that helpful right now? Is that going to move the needle in the direction I want it to go? Or is that going to actually just create conflict in this moment? So it can be hard to always have the pause and the reflection and to refrain from nagging and harping and all of those different things. It takes more care. It takes more patience. I notice that when things need to happen at a quicker pace, I tend to bypass these tools that I know work, which are to connect first, to get down on their level, to not yell across the room, whatever it might be, because I'm kind of in that rush mind frame. But if I can pause for a second and remember the tools of, you know, just slowing it down for a second, checking in with him on his timing, what's going to work best for him, noticing what he did right, setting some clear expectations, and then, you know, releasing, not nagging. I was just talking to a parent about this an hour ago. We were having a check-in call. I'm coaching her teenager right now, and I'm also coaching her in my parent coaching community. And she was telling me how in the past, you know, she would nag and nag and nag and nag about, you know, putting the laundry into the basket, and it wasn't getting done. It was creating lots of frustration. And then she kind of changed her tactic, set a clear expectation, and then let go and stopped harping about it, stopped nagging about it. And she said it's pretty amazing that all of a sudden the thing is getting done way more often with much less conflict now that she is not micromanaging the situation. And so sometimes it's about, you know, just giving them that little extra trust and responsibility so that they can take some ownership of whatever it might be. So to kind of recap, our teenagers are not a problem. We often build them up to be problems, and we start focusing on the problems, which amplifies them and makes it seem like that's all there is. And so it's so important to also notice the things they're doing right, to give them some ownership over what they're doing, and to release a little bit of the control so that they can actually step into more responsibility and step into maturity and into themselves more by us pointing out and highlighting and celebrating the things that they're doing right and not just pointing out the things that they're doing wrong and micromanaging them all the time. The second thing that can get in the way of connecting with your teenager is that you are running on empty. So life has become this endless to-do list, and you're always behind, always overwhelmed, always one thing away from the edge. And when you're depleted, there's genuinely nothing left to give, and connection requires something from you. So this is just that self-reflection moment. You know, how have you been doing? Have you been feeling just totally burnt out? Have you been feeling like you're running on fumes or on steam? And so whenever your teenager needs something from you, you are just on the edge of snapping. So it could be a simple request that they have, or it could be a missed chore that they forgot to do or didn't do. or it could be an interaction that they had with their sibling, but you're just right on that edge and just ready to explode at any given moment because you are on empty. And so just checking in with yourself, like, how am I doing right now? Have I been just on that edge of explosiveness, right? Is my bucket just brimming to the top and ready to spill out at any given moment? And there's no shame and blame in that, right? What we're asked to manage and juggle in the everyday life experience is so immense. But if we are running on stress and anxiety and fumes and frustration, it's going to be very difficult to have space for connection because we're going to be so quick to react, so quick to snap, so quick to yell. All of those things that are in opposition to connection. So just thinking about, like, what is one thing that you can do to feed your own self right now, right? To have a little pause in your day, a little self-care, maybe something that can get taken off of the plate so that you have a little bit more spaciousness, right? And we'll talk about a few more things to add in or think about or consider to really address this point of running on empty. You are absolutely not alone in this. I think this is actually an epidemic in our culture and even just across the whole globe, with people having so many things on their plate. And when you're navigating parenting and you're navigating running your kids all over town for this, that, and the other, plus you're going to work, plus you need to put food on the table and go to the grocery store and do the dishes, it's a lot. So how do we manage that? What are our tools for regulating our nervous system and decreasing our stress levels, even when we are holding a lot? Because what I'm noticing is that the workload doesn't seem to get lighter. It seems like, if anything, more and more seems to get added in. And so if we are going to be so busy, if we are going to be juggling so much, what can we do to keep ourselves in a tiny bit of balance, right? Not like we're in this Zen balance state where half of my time is in meditation and soaking in the hot springs, and half the time is driving my kids around and doing a couple hours of work, because we know that's not realistic. But what are some things that I can do just throughout the day, even if it's just noticing the thought I'm thinking that's creating more stress and reframing the thought, right? So what are some little ways that I can reduce that feeling of depletion, reduce that feeling of burnout, and really feed myself the energy and positivity and the mindset that I need in order to increase my capacity, in order to be able to show up in the way that I know my teenager really needs right now. All right, and that brings me to the third thing that gets in the way of connection with your teenager, which is that you're running on old patterns and on autopilot. So a lot of how we parent, we didn't choose. It was handed to us. The way we respond when we're frustrated, the way we shut down or blow up, the things we say without thinking, so much of it is inherited. And until we look at it honestly, we just keep passing it on. So we, again, want to have awareness as the first step, right? What are those patterns that were handed down to me that I don't want to keep perpetuating? So really starting to just notice and remember, what was it like in your home growing up? How did your parents react or respond to you? What was the energy like in your home growing up? What were some of the things that they would do when they were upset or stressed? And then bring it back to yourself. Are you repeating those same patterns, right? Some of those things that, used to upset us so much that our parents did, and all of a sudden we can find ourselves doing the same exact things. And so we want to really just start to notice and catch ourselves. And again, not with shame and blame, with a lot of compassion, because, we didn't have control of what home we came into when we were born, and what the climate of our home was, and how our parents talked to each other, and how our parents talked to us. And we didn't have control over, whether or not our basic foundational needs were met, which is going to create a lot more stress or a lot more peace, depending on how that happened in your home, right? So there were so many factors outside of our control in our own upbringing. But now We are the ones that are setting the climate. We are the ones that are creating the foundation. We are the ones that are setting the energy and the tone in our own homes. And we get to be reflective about that. So, how am I interacting in those high stress moments when my teen misbehaved or didn't show up for curfew or didn't do their chore or fights with their sibling or won't pull out their homework or shows up late to school for the 20th time in a row, right? What do I do in those high stress moments? How do I respond? Am I pausing? Am I regulating myself before I respond? Or am I lashing out? Am I reacting with my flipped lid, right? With my prefrontal cortex offline in my survival mode? And if that's you, again, I can't say it enough. Like, no shame and blame, right? We do the best we can until we know better, and then we do better, right? It's the same for me. I operated very reactively for the first 10 to 12 years of my motherhood journey. I was so reactive. I yelled all the time. I carried forward patterns that I grew up with that I didn't even realize I was doing. It was unconscious. I was on autopilot. And it wasn't until I started to pause and recognize what was happening and the implications of what was happening on my children that I could actually start to turn the tide and bring it back to what I could control. And that's always myself. I can't control what other people do around me. I can't control what my kids do. I can control myself. And as I do that, that ripples out, right? I can de-escalate a situation. I can help my kids co-regulate. So if I can bring my calm, regulated energy into a space or into a conversation, I can help my kid to regulate. I can help to model how we have good communication. I can help to model what we do when challenges come our way. So I can shift those patterns. It takes a willingness to look at the ways I'm contributing to the problem. And when I do that, it has the power to impact so much. So we want to move from autopilot into intentionality, right? To really being consciously aware of what we're doing. And so maybe you have an explosive moment with your teenager. And afterwards, right, when you've calmed down, you can reflect on it. Like, what happened? What just happened there? What happened for me? What was the trigger for me that made me feel so explosive? What could I do differently next time? What would help me to regulate and respond differently next time, right? So we have to stop running on autopilot and out of reactivity and move towards conscious awareness and changing up those generational patterns so that it stops here, right? If we can stop it here, then our kids have a lot better chance of having a different situation in their homes with their children, right? So we want to do that work here, and that will ripple down from the generations here on out. All right, the fourth thing that can get in the way of connection with your teen is when you don't own your part. All right, so this one also takes a lot of courage to look at. So when you lose your cool, when you say something you regret, when you handle something badly, are you owning it? Are you going back and saying, that was on me? Because your teenager's watching how you handle being wrong. And it matters more than almost anything else for trust. All right. So when we can actually acknowledge, like, I shouldn't have said that. I'm really sorry. Right. Or I've been really working on not yelling and I just yelled. I'm sorry. I'm going to keep working on that. Will you forgive me? Sometimes it feels so justified. Like, I yelled because you did this really horrible thing. And so we feel justified in raising our voice or, saying that thing or whatever it might be, because we feel like we needed to intervene in that moment or whatever. But what I've kind of found is that even if my teen was in the wrong, if I am in the wrong after, right, it almost kind of negates what they just did, because now I have to take ownership for myself. So I have to go back and say, hey, I shouldn't have said that. I'm really sorry. And that's it. I don't even have to say, because you did this thing, or, but it was your fault because, right? Because then that doesn't really have the same weight as me just taking ownership. And maybe down the line, maybe, the next day I can say, hey, let's talk about, what happened before I said that thing, because that is something that we do need to address. But in the moment, right after I have made a mistake, or, the next hour, my biggest job, my biggest responsibility is just to own my part. And that is so powerful. I say this all the time, but it doesn't really matter what we say to our teens, what we tell them they should do. They are going to do what they see us doing. So if I'm telling them that they need to take ownership, that they need to apologize, that they need to make things right, but I'm not willing to do that myself, then they're going to be a lot less likely to do that work. Okay. So anything that is really important for me to see them doing, I want to show them how to do it. I want to show them that I'm not above that we are actually in this relationship together. And when they see that, they can trust us and we can have that strong connection. But if I'm breaking trust because I'm not owning my part, then, there's not as much ground to stand on. All right. And that brings me to the final thing that can get in the way of connection that I want to talk about today. And that is that you have forgotten what this is all about. So you had a dream once of being a parent, of having this kid to love and laugh with and actually enjoy. And somewhere along the way, it got buried under logistics and worry and taking everything so seriously. And I just want to remind all of us today why we're doing this thing, right? I want to remind us way back before we even had this child, the dream of being a parent, of having this little being in our arms, of having this little person to share things with and connect with and watch grow right before our eyes. Like that excitement, that joy, that hope that we had, right? When we realized we were going to become a parent, or even that moment when we held them in our arms for the first time, this beautiful, perfect being. And then all of a sudden life happens, right? Life gets busy and they become themselves, right? They're not this person that we had imagined that they would be. They're their own unique person with flaws. Lots of beautiful things as well, but they have flaws and they do things differently than we might want them to do them. And we have to kind of adjust. And so we need to reorient and remember what we're doing this for. We're doing this because we absolutely love our kid. That's why we're their parent. We absolutely love them. We see them as beautiful and whole and perfect. They are flawed humans, as we all are. And we are here to enjoy them and celebrate them and usher them into their own life in the best way we can. And hopefully throughout the process, have lots of laughter and fun together and play some games together and have some good conversations. We are not just here to micromanage and to direct and to control these little beings. We are here to support them fully, to love them fully, to give them an entire section of our heart. And so it's so important to remember that in the day-to-day, as we grind through all of the to-dos, that, oh yeah, I can stop and have these moments of connection with my kid. It's not just about the logistics and, getting all of their things together and helping them to follow through and nagging when they don't, but also finding those moments to really deeply and truly connect with them in between all the noise and all the busyness. I've mentioned this many times on here before and in lots of different posts and things like that, but the research of Dr. John Gottman and Daniel Goleman talks about how in order to have a strong and connected relationship with anyone, we need 5 positive interactions for every 1 negative interaction. And so even just doing a little audit of the last few days with your teenager, how many positive interactions did you have for every negative interaction? The other day, this last weekend, I didn't do so great with my ratio. I had lots of negatives. I just kept nagging and harping and berating and all the things until my kid was like, stop. Why are you pointing out all the problems? What about the things I did right? What about things I did good? And I had to take that in and I had to pause and give him a big hug and apologize and regroup for the day because he was right. I was not focusing on the connection. I was just focusing on the problems. So just a reminder of what we're doing this for. We're doing it because we love these kids with our entire being and we want things to be good for them. All right, so let's go ahead and move into wrapping this up. So today we talked about 5 things that can quietly erode your connection with your teenager, which is seeing them as a problem to manage, running on empty, operating on autopilot with old inherited patterns, not owning it when you've made a mistake, and losing touch with the joy and the dream of what this was supposed to be. And here's what I want to leave you with. Stop waiting for your teenager to change. Stop waiting for them to behave better, to be more responsible, or to make it easier on you. The shift starts with you, and that's actually really good news because it means you have agency here. You have a lot more control over the dynamic and over the situation than you think. So I would encourage you to wake up tomorrow with an intention for how you want to show up, even just one sentence to yourself before your feet hit the floor. And then add in something, even 5 or 10 minutes that belong just to you. It could be before the kids get up with your cup of coffee in the morning. It could be a bath at the end of the night. It could be a walk around the block or a few pages of a book or some stretching or just having a quiet moment to yourself. Whatever it is, it counts. We make time for what we prioritize, and you have to be a priority. And as you prioritize yourself, you will have more capacity for the connection that you really want to have with your teenager. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you so much for being here with me. If this episode resonated with you at all, make sure to share it with a parent who needs to hear it today. And as always, I'd love to know it landed for you. You can drop me a message anytime on Instagram, or you can drop me an email or anything like that. Any way of communicating with me is welcome and appreciated. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye, everyone. Did you enjoy the show? If so, would you take 30 seconds to subscribe so you don't miss an episode? Leave a quick review so more parents can find these conversations and maybe even share this episode to your stories. And if you want to connect, please send me a DM on Instagram. I'm at jasmine.guidedpassages, and that's Jasmine with a Y. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll talk to you next week.